Welcome to Inside Abode, ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all doing? I am your host, Dave Jones, and we have a special podcast for you today. As you know, it is Pride Month in June, but also in Tacoma, we celebrate Pride Month in July as well. So the best part about being in Tacoma is we get to celebrate Pride Month 2 months in a row, but honestly, it's every month for the most part. So I mean, like, no different than any of these other months. It's like, it's something that we should be talking about and advocating for all 12 months. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. I'm going to get straight into my guest today because we have a special guest who is I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then also I'm going to let our other guests introduce themselves as well. So I'm going to start with Mrs. Reay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
And tell the audience about yourself. What's that?
I said I'm so excited to have my buddy Matthew today too. It's like we're coming up with our year anniversary of meeting each other at Pride.
Yeah. And then also tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm an agent over at the Lakewood Abode office. We've been here a year now, so it's nice to feature Oasis and Matthew. Spoiler alert, we're talking about Oasis when they're our next door neighbors down the street.
Thanks for the invite. My name is Matthew Wilson. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the executive director of Oasis Youth Center. And Morgan and I met at Pride, and she helped me buy my first house. And so, yay, Morgan, thank you.
Yeah. So she helped you buy your first house. Oh, you know what? And this isn't a question on the actual thing that we talked about, but I'm going to go ahead and just go into this. So how was that experience? Because we had Spencer on the show, and we did talk about buying a home. And he shared some things with us about, like, we're just diving right in because it seems like we've been talking forever, but I know the people listening are like, damn, you just getting right to it. But we'll get back to the Oasis Center Youth Center, because I think that's the reason why we're here, right? In terms of the home buying part, Morgan, you helped. How was that? Was that experience different in any way, or was it just the same as any other situation?
I would say it's mostly the same. I mean, you bought your house, 6 months ago now? So our market was just starting to heat up again when we bought the house. So we went through kind of the normal feelings of multiple offer situations, but we went to some rural settings too, which was a little different from where I usually cover. How did it feel for you, Matthew?
You know, once I settled on the fact that there is not a right time to buy a house, that there is never the perfect interest rate or the perfect house, that it's just when you need a house and when you're ready to make that leap, then I felt more comfortable. And meeting Morgan that was say, hey, I'm going to be patient with you, I'm going to help you, that really helped, because I didn't want to feel pressured. And I also wanted to make sure I could find a neighborhood that was supportive of LGBTQ people, which is interesting because I just found out that the north end of Tacoma, there's been 20 reports of stolen pride flags off of people's houses, including their poles. So this idea of safe is another idea that isn't true. Like, you just have to find the place where you feel comfortable.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Matthew, because Ann mentioned that the other day, and I just was just like, what? Like, what? I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But we're gonna dive into that a little bit later on in the conversation. And we talk about safe spaces, and the whole point of this is shaping safe spaces and the work that you're doing, Matthew. So tell us a little bit about the Oasis Center and your work there.
Well, this is something I am always happy to talk about. Oasis started about 38 years ago in a church basement. That was in response to, unfortunately, some of the same things we're dealing with today, which are family rejection, being expelled from their faiths, feeling isolated and bullied at school, and dealing with general health the inequities that come with being queer and not having access or being treated fairly. And so we were part of the health department for most of the 90s. And then the health department said, we don't want to do this anymore. And so we're like, oh crap, okay, what are we going to do? And the PCAF, which is formerly called Pierce County AIDS Foundations, stepped up and they said, we want Oasis and we know it's a valuable resource. So they supported us. And in 2013, we had a big milestone, which was coming out in a public location. So Oasis, the organization, had its own coming out process. Before you had to know somebody and do the secret knock. And so now we have a place where people can walk up and join Oasis and learn more about it.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just was in a time where everybody wanted a space that felt safer, and for what that meant is not having a sign outside. And, when you go into a building with a rainbow on it and a sign that says Oasis, you're kind of outing yourself. And so folks weren't ready to do that. Mm-hmm. I think in some ways it shows the progress that we've made by having a public location in society, and we have a long way to go, but that was a sign of progress.
Yeah, for sure. So the Oasis Center, are there age ranges that you serve, or is it all across the board? Like, tell me a little bit more about who you serve.
Yeah, so we believe that youth that are queer should be valued as the strong creative leaders that they are. And we want to create a safer space for youth to learn, connect, and thrive. And so in order to do that, we have a large age range. So 11 to 14 has their own programming so that they can be in their age cohort, which is generally middle school or junior high. And then we do 14 to 24, so youth and young adults. And we want that coming together so people can provide some mentoring opportunities, and everybody has a chance to grow, including the staff and the volunteers. So yeah, 11 to 24 is our age range.
Oh.
And how do people get connected with Oasis? How do the youth get involved? Are they walking through the door? Are there school counselors that are referring out? How does that work?
Well, we do a lot of outreach. So we send out information to school counselors. We do presentations. I go on a podcast maybe. And and then we do social media. But what I think speaks highly of the program is the most common referral source is from a current youth. So youth are bringing their own friends saying, hey, I've gotten something out of this space. It's a joyful space, a space to learn and to meet new friends. And so that's actually our most common referral method, is youth bringing in their peers.
And what does that intake look like? Because I know that, there might be situations where the youth might not be out yet, like you mentioned, or is there, in terms of privacy? Because I remember, because I used to work in the education, and, when you're dealing with people who have things happening and they don't want X to know, or if there's something going on and it's another student or whatever, they don't want, there's fear of retaliation and things like that. So during that intake process, how do we keep our youth, safe? And then what are the expectations on both sides for that?
Yeah, that last part is a good question, because when we do the intake process, we want them to know what they can expect from us and what we expect from them, because this is a joint effort. And the intake process usually takes about 30 minutes. We are mobile, so we can meet folks at school, at a Starbucks, and go over the intake process if that is easier. But most often they come during drop-in hours, and we have a questionnaire that asks questions about why are you here? What do you want to accomplish? The basic stuff of name and pronouns. And then we go over the community agreements so folks know that, hey, we want you to take care of yourself, others, and the space that you're in. And that creates a place where everyone's invested in each other, themselves, and taking care of the center as well. So yeah, it takes about 30 minutes, and we can find out, like, where are you in your life? Where are some ways that we might be able to help you? We do a lot of connection to therapy. That's one of our biggest services we offer. So if folks don't have insurance or know where to go to find a therapist, we can help with that. We also do advocacy, where maybe things are tough at school and teachers and administration aren't listening, and we can intervene and go there and say, what's going on? How can we fix this? So we also have like workshops that happen as well at Oasis. So we have one called Adulting 101, where folks learn about what you need to live on your own. And we do yoga and art night, and every night kind of has like an educational component to it. And we go over that on the intake, where folks can see like a calendar of typical events, and then they can pick out stuff based on their interests that they share with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for breaking it down. That I know that for someone that's listening that may not, know where to start or when they walk in or whatever. And you mentioned you have drop-in hours. Are those like during the day? Do they change from time to time, or is it just like a set time?
So we're after school hours and evenings, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We're 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. And folks can just come to our door if they want to do an intake. It's 2215 Pacific Avenue in Tacoma. And then on Wednesdays, we have our Lakewood location that Morgan had mentioned, which is at St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Lakewood. And we're there 1:30 to 5:30 on Wednesdays. And that is a program that has been expanding. We had to put a pause on it because of COVID, but we're back and open and happy to be there. But, give us a call, set up a time, or just walk in.
Right. And so we know that like there's been a lot of violence, both in government policy and physical violence against transgender. Like, how does Oasis support transgender youth?
Yeah, well, over 50% of our youth identify as transgender or non-binary, and we offer a lot of different supports. So one of the supports we talked about was therapy. The second is gender conforming clothes that will help them meet their needs. We have emergency financial assistance to help them through a transition process and help them understand what the laws are and the resources are. For example, we just hosted a name change clinic where we had lawyers and volunteers help youth walk through the process of how to change your name. If anyone's been married, they know there's a million places to change your last name. So that is it's a big deal. It's also, youth told us that was like one of the best days of their lives when they can finally have the name that aligned with who they are. And so that was a really big day. We hadn't done a gender name change clinic before. We just help people, and there was a lot of demand for it.
Yeah, so Morgan, you talked about going over to the Lakewood site. So I'm excited because I just learned that. I didn't realize the Lakewood site existed, and it's right down the street from our office in Lakewood. So I'm really excited about that. How long has that Lakewood location been open?
I think we did it in October of 2019, and then paused for about 2 years, and then been reopened.
Okay.
That's a tough time to open. You
That's actually, I started my job in March 2020. So the first action I did was shut everything down. That was kind of like
No.
day.
Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. That's crazy. That's crazy. So Morgan mentioned the transgender piece, and we were talking before this podcast, and we were all in Furcrest that night. I didn't realize you were there, Matthew. But so for those listening, in our little city of Furcrest, that we had a city council meeting to decide whether the pride flag was going to fly on the pole at the chambers, is that what they call it, the chambers?
Mm-hmm.
And it had already been flying, I believe, at the rec center, which is in the middle of like the town. But that was an interesting night. And tell me about your guys' experience. First, Morgan, I'll start with you. Like, what were your thoughts on that night? Because I saw you there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known about it without Matthew. Him and I were grabbing happy hour that night. And I was like, what are you doing later? And he's like, well, let me tell you, I'm going to Furcrest City Council. And I was like, cool, let's carpool. We're going. But I mean, it was a beautiful thing to see. I think there were over 70 people that showed up, and that is not a very large space. So it was like a very overwhelming presence of, people in, rainbow gear and waving the flags every time somebody testified.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the more memorable pieces, I'm sure you guys remember it too, at the very end, there was a youth who stood up and he testified, and that's really intimidating as an adult to do. Mm-hmm. I had never testified before that night, and I was sweating bullets. I think I blacked out during that experience, which I'm doing right now too. But it, he talked about that, he goes to school. He has no choice in where he can go. He can't go to another state, another city that supports him. And it's like, I need you to support me, like seeing a symbol like a flag. That's just a symbol, but it shows like there are people who care about me, and this might be a safe space. And just on a side note, I mean, I think a lot of clients, when they're looking for houses, like they're looking for the flags in the neighborhood to know if they're welcome or not, because I can't tell them if it's a safe space, just fair housing wise. And so, I mean, that's a symbol of, am I going to be welcome here? And it was really beautiful for him to share and advocate for an entire city like that. That was beautiful.
I agree. Well spoken. I was tripped. Yeah, that was great. Matthew, what was your take on that? Because you're, I don't know if you're a resident of Furcrest, but I am. I'm a resident of Furcrest, and so I was there, obviously. But like, what was your take on the night?
I was a little unsure where it was going to head. Sometimes these things are wonderful and beautiful, and other times they're very contentious. And it was nice to see that everybody was pretty respectful of their opinions, and it was great to see that the majority of people that were there were to support it. Having youth voice is so important. We do trainings in the community with businesses, school nurses, counselors, administrators, all sorts of folks, whoever invites us in. We do these trainings and we bring youth to do a panel, and consistently that is the thing that people say moved them the most, where you kind of see the needle moved of like opening their minds and hearts. And yeah, I see it all the time, and it still blows me away every time.
Yeah, I had the same take. I was actually really proud of our little city that night. And the reason why is because of the discourse. I thought it was high level discourse, and typically we don't get that. Like, so for example, because a lot of times it's bite-sized think pieces on social media, which is different than like actually having to articulate your thought in front of multiple people and stand on that, say it with your chest. It's easy to do it on a keyboard, but it's different when you have someone that has maybe an opposing view and might help you see something differently when you're standing there right in front of them, as opposed to just saying, well, it shouldn't be able to, like the military guys, the flag thing. Cool. Okay. I get it. Like, however, and we're in 2023 and things are different. And my point in that was, okay, so I find it ironic, for one, that pride and what everyone is here listening, what it stands for, isn't part of the America and the flag. And then the whole idea of nothing will ever be on the flagpole and da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, that's great. I respect that that's how you feel. And that flag don't mean that to me. So, like, if it wants to redeem itself for me, having the pride flag up there would be cool. Having a Black Lives Matter flag up there would be cool. Having the Asian, whatever other flag that stands for unity and equity, I'm game for having it be right up underneath that flag and breaking that tradition and that white supremacist mold. I'm here for that. So that's how I feel on that. Because I know a lot of people who have that talking point, and I'm like, it's the same talking point as Colin Kaepernick. It's the same white supremacist like stand-in. It's just like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. And I have family in the military and feel that way. And I'm not saying you can't feel proud about the flag. I'm just telling you my feelings about that flag ain't the same.
Yeah.
That point was brought up numerous times too during the night. It's not representative of everybody, or at least that's not a lot of people's experience.
And then the opposing thought to that might be like, well, I fought for that flag. It's like, yeah, so did black people, so did Asian people, so did gay people, so did, you know what I mean? Like, so then it should be like, it should be, but that's not the way it is here. Like, so we gotta redeem that. Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like there's always a rebuttal to that stance, because America has not lived up to its ideals, not even close. So we have to rectify that.
Shout out to you and Morgan as allies showing up, saying, hey, this is important. And you both did such an eloquent job of sharing your opinions and supporting the community. And that's why I'm happy to be here talking with you all, because you're doing the work, you're showing up.
Yeah, it's interesting when people speak. They're speaking from their perspective, and their perspective is their reality, no matter what side of that situation people are on, or even on a larger scale, and that's great. And I would hope that they would listen enough to, because a lot of times when people are in opposition, it's like all these hypotheticals. So a lot of times I'll ask them, like, why do you feel that way? How much have you experienced that situation, whether it's transgender athletes or whatever? And most people say they haven't. And I'm like, it's interesting. You feel really strongly about that for something you've never experienced. I just feel like that's really fascinating. And like, I had my kids across the street from the white nationalist that was in Faircrest. This was another hubbub around the time when 16, 17, I don't know when it was. It was when Trump was in office and riling up all the white supremacists. There was a person that was renting across the street from the school that had a white supremacist flag up, or white nationalist flag, and they switched them out, and they're doing the whole thing. You know, you can probably envision what it looked like. And I'm sorry, but my sons walk back home from school. I don't want them walking by that house. I don't feel safe, because that flag does not stand for unity, and it does not stand for equity, and it does not stand for equality, and it doesn't stand for anything but white supremacy. And so, which has a violent history. That's fact. You know, I'm not making this up. And so I felt some kind of way about having my sons, my black sons, you know, mixed race sons, walking by that building every day, or that house every day. I didn't feel safe. So I understand, like, in a real way, like, what it means to have that pride flag flying up there and really having people feel safe in the community. And so this whole ripping the flags down thing in North Tacoma, I'm sorry, but like, what? I mean, don't you have something better to do with your time, for one, whoever that is? But
yeah,
anyway.
I just don't understand why there's so much time spent on such a small portion of the population. Like, there are really 1.3% of transgender people in the world, in the United States. Like you said, don't you have something better to do?
I think we should say that Faircrest did decide they were raising the flag. just so everybody knows.
It is. And it was a great night. Like, I felt like all points were heard. I heard the points, the opposing views. I empathize even sometimes with them. Yes, we have to be the bigger person to empathize. I'm willing to do that. And you know what? I just felt to make sure that everyone feels safe, I'm okay with changing traditions. So, yeah. And so shout out to Furcrest. Let's get back to, sorry, I went on a semi-rant and tangent there because I'm on Twitter every day and I have to see this stuff all the time. And it's just like, man, I'm going to go ahead and get my stuff off here. So I think, well, you talked about the name changes part. Didn't we already talk about the transgender youth name changes? You talked about that. The Project 13 program, it sounds incredibly valuable for the LGBTQ community. Like, can you elaborate more on the Project 13 program and its impacts?
Yeah, so it's been about 8 years since we first started it, and it came out of a community need where youth were coming out at younger ages, and we were only serving youth at age 14 previously, but youth and families were calling us and saying, just came out, I don't know what to do, and they're 11. And we're like, oh, we need to respond to this need. And so through our Community Action Council, we started Project 13, and it's one of our most successful programs. It meets on Wednesdays. They're part of a cohort, and it's about learning how to be a good friend, how to be in a relationship that's consensual. And we're not talking about sex in that way. We're talking about like, hey, can I give you a hug? Do you want to exchange numbers? Do you want to hang out? And how to respect people's boundaries. And so it's just learning a lot of things that you don't learn in school. And if your parents aren't talking about it, where are they getting it? And so, yeah, they just get a chance to make friends, learn about life. A lot of learning about boundaries.
Yeah.
We need an adult class for
that. Morgan, you're talking about you follow the political side of things on some of the anti-LGBTQ bills and things of that nature. Do you have any questions for Matthew on that or any thoughts around those?
I mean, when youths are coming in, are these discussions, are people having political discussions in there? Are there safe spaces to be able to talk about that? What does that look like at Oasis? I know that's got to be, the kid who's at Furcrest talking about his experience in school. I feel like he's a good example of, he's following the news. He knows he's not safe in certain spaces. So how do you address that when you're at Oasis?
It's a tricky balance. So one of the things is, a common thing we hear is your sexual orientation and your gender identity are the most boring parts about you when you're at Oasis. And so they want a place where they can step away from that part that gets sensationalized, criticized, they get bullied for. And at the same time, those things that are fueling the bullying and the isolation is what's going on in the news. So we do talk about it and we create a safe space to do that. And, this last year, there were more anti-LGBTQ bills proposed and passed than ever before. And we think, oh, well, we're in Washington. What does that matter? What it means is families are going to be moving here because they're looking for a state that's supportive. And also, you go outside of the I-5 corridor, that you're not always in a supportive neighborhood. And these bills and this hate rhetoric is empowering people to be mean and hateful to a level that we haven't seen in a while. Yeah. And so having a space like Oasis is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of in reference to what you said about, when you talk about locations, outside of the I-5 corridor, not always feeling safe. I mean, I would say my least favorite part of my job is when clients who, whether they're identify as queer or they're anybody who's not white, and they're asking me, am I going to be safe? I can't answer that because of fair housing regulations. This isn't a question of, do I not feel safe because of who lives in the neighborhood, or are there Black people in the neighborhood, where it's like a steering issue. This is will I feel safe because of who I am, not because of other people. And that is really, really hard for me. And I think about that every time I visit a property. Like, I thought about that when we were in certain areas, Matthew. And that's why I'm like, you really need to be looking into your neighborhoods. What are the flags out there? And, I've had instances with clients, we were looking at properties with you alone a lot of the time. So if there's a Ring camera, they're not always going to see if there's a partner involved, and they're not going to make assumptions. But, when I had clients a couple of months ago who were looking down in Thurston, and we put in several offers. And there was a point where you don't always know when there's a fair housing violation. It's not always blatant. There's not always a listing agent on the other end saying, hey, this is why we're not accepting your offer. But sometimes there's a feeling, and it was a gut feeling. And, we had to have some of those difficult conversations of, well, should we put both of you on the contract, or do we take one person off the contract and add it later so the seller isn't making an assumption about you? And that's a really crummy conversation to have with somebody, but that's also part of the reality at the same time. So I find it very difficult not to, if I feel some sort of way about a neighborhood, not give my 2 cents on it if I think it's not going to be safe for, the queer community. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's so important too that, like, I know that, in the role that I am, that I'm a queer and I'm also a white leader, and I have to remind folks that LGBTQ crosses all intersections of faith, race, ability, veteran status. So it's important that we talk about those things, because I think sometimes the mainstream media thinks of it as like a white is queer, and they don't remember that this is one of those identities that crosses through every section. And
no, that's a very good point, because I see that, I see it and feel it in terms of what that looks like in mainstream media, and each culture within its culture. So whether it's the Black culture, Asian culture, Hispanic culture, has their own baggage to deal with in terms of how they deal with the LGBTQ community, and how they in the relationship with the LGBT community. So like there's so many layers to this, and then you add in patriarchy. So I mean, it's just so layered, and that's why I think it's really a difficult one to navigate, because one, it goes against not mine, but like for people who oppose, it's different, and anything different from folks that they resist it a lot of times. And it's just they try to make a complex thing really easy to talk about, which it's not. It's so layered and nuanced. So, and not every person feels, not every LGBT person is the same. Not everyone carries, like, just like every Black person ain't an activist, I don't know. So it's just a really, really fascinating one. So I'm glad you brought that up about the mainstream media, because I have a feeling this next year, especially with this election cycle, we kind of already see where things are going. They're not coming off these talking points, so it's going to be guns and LGBT. So let's get ready for it and start having more layered, nuanced conversations, and not just talking points from political parties, no matter what side that talking point comes from.
Yeah. I think, this is my job, so I'm going to take a moment to plug.
Yes,
We are
please.
always looking for volunteers with different identities, different professions, so that youth can see themselves as successful, that they can see themselves in long-term relationships. That, you know, we have volunteers that have been married and been together for 50 years, and youth will be like, wow, I never thought that I could live that long, or I never thought I could be a lawyer, and so if you are interested in volunteering, we're not just looking for queer volunteers, we're looking for allies as well. And so, yeah, talk to us.
And I'm really excited too. You know, Abode at Pride, we have our booth every year, at least the last couple of years since we've been doing it. We're going to collect donations for Oasis Center this year by means of raffling off some really snazzy baskets. Can't plug all the places that are going to be sponsoring the baskets, but we had some really nice ones from like Brown Winery. I think we had one from like V Athletics last year. We had some good ones. I think the popular one was the pet basket. All people were stoked about that, but it's going to go to Oasis this year. And how else are you raising funds week after Pride, Matthew?
We definitely didn't practice this. So we have an annual fundraiser. I call it Tacoma's Quickest Fundraiser. It is on Saturday, July 15th from 11 to 1. We have some amazing 2 drag queens that host, and folks come out for a delicious brunch. It's going to be at the Point Ruston Silver Cloud, and we'll have some great prizes. You'll get to learn more about Oasis, hear from some youth, and just connect with new people. So tickets are on sale now, brunchtickets.org. We would love for you to go purchase a ticket, come have fun with us. You know, we get a lot of support from different forms of government, and government doesn't like to pay for the fun stuff, like the food that youth need, or a prize, or the bus that's going to take us on a field trip. And that's what the fundraiser does, is help for those things that keep us running.
Yeah.
Yep. It's really cool. So again, what's the website again? Is it
brunchtickets.org?
Brunchtickets.org. So you can go there and grab your tickets for the event. Anything else on the last? So Morgan, do you have anything else for it?
No, I'm just excited for that event. It's got a fun theme. What's the theme, Matthew?
It's Olympus this year.
Yeah.
Greek mythology. It'll be fun. Folks can decorate their tables. They can come in costume. Last year it was Broadway, so we had a great turnout of people in different themes of Broadway shows, and folks were really excited about doing Olympus, about the importance of storytelling, and also the week before that is Pride. So if you haven't been to Tacoma Pride, that is, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Is that the 8th? I believe
So. Yeah.
So that would be downtown Tacoma, kind of around 9th
Fireman's Park
on Pacific. Yeah, Fireman's Park. So we'll be there. Abode will have their booth. We'd love to meet you.
Yep. It's about to be up. It's about to go down. We're about to have all kinds of. It's big. It's only grown every single time. Like last year's Pride, it was huge, like gigantic. Well done. You know, like I think it was a fun event, and we've gone down. I mean, I saw some old pictures. You know how those memories come up on your phone? Like we had some from like 18 and 19, because we've always been just trying to make sure that we made it down there and represented and showed out. Matthew, do you have any other things, any lasting or things that you want people to know about Oasis? We've already talked about how they can volunteer, but if they wanted to reach out, or what else you got?
Yeah, I think just like the importance of talking about the issues of what's going on politically, you can be an ally also by talking about resources in the community, because you never know who's listening and who needs to hear it. So talk about the issues, talk about the resources. That's a great way to support. Sometimes we get questions about, I think my student is queer, or I think my son or daughter is queer, and they don't know how to approach it. And I'm like, well, are you talking about it? Because if you open that door, you'll see who walks through it. And so it's the invitation to be open and welcoming and warm.
Yeah. Well, I have one more segment that we didn't talk about, and it's called Hot Take. Are y'all ready for a hot take? So this is a section or a segment where I ask you a either or question. You just have to pick one. It's really that simple.
Okay.
Are y'all ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
Okay. So we'll go in order. So I'll have, so Morgan, you'll answer first, and then Matthew will answer first. All right, here we go. I'll start with an easy one. Summer or winter?
Summer. Hands down.
Okay. Easy. Matthew?
Yeah, summer for me as well. I need the daylight.
Not winter, folks, huh? Okay. All right. How about this one, Morgan? Coffee or gum?
Coffee.
You can only have one for the rest of your life. No more gum for
Coffee. Nobody's choosing gum. Nobody's choosing.
Well, here's the thing.
What?
Gum for me.
What?
Yeah.
I need
said
it.
gum. Oh.
Like between iced tea and gum, then it's a little more difficult.
Ooh. Okay, we split on that one. All right, so Morgan, Taco Tuesday or Pizza Friday?
Taco Tuesday.
Okay. Matthew?
I'm gonna go pizza.
Ooh, Pizza Friday.
Hot takes are on these things.
Who? My hot
pizza.
takes? Oh, you have pizza. All right. So this one's actually, okay. How about this one, Morgan? Ice cream or gelato?
Oh. That's a tough one. I'm going to say if it's real gelato, I would go gelato all the way. It's the good stuff.
Yeah.
When I studied abroad, I bought gelato once or twice a day for 3 months. I could have probably traveled to another country, but I spent it on gelato.
Easy to do. Matthew, what do you got?
Yeah, same one for me. Hey, look,
Gelato.
I'm done one.
Okay, we're good. All right.
Dave, I'll flip it back. Is it ice cream or gelato?
Oh, you want ice cream? Gelato for sure. Gelato for sure. My hot takes. I do hot takes every day on Twitter. Like, I'm always sharing my whatever weird opinion on whatever. All right, last one. I know my answer for this one. Drag wedding or a regular wedding? Morgan, have you ever been to a drag wedding?
I haven't. That sounds fun.
Oh, you're missing out.
I think I want to go to a drag wedding now, so I'm in. Sounds like a party.
Oh man, I feel like if I say what I need to say, I'm gonna have my gay card taken away. I don't know. To a drag wedding. I'm coming to go. But I want to go. I love drag weddings.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, shout out to the divas. So when Shavi and Kim got married, I still say to this day that was my favorite wedding of all time. Like, it was amazing, and it was just the most fun wedding I have ever been to. Drag MC, like, did it up. Like, it was dope. Like, never been to a wedding like that ever in my life, and never have seen anything close to it. Shout out to divas. So
Divas, please post some pictures. Now I want to see.
oh man, it was a while ago, but we had fun. That was I never will forget that. That was fun. All right. So Matthew, how do people get in touch with you if they need to reach out, or have, maybe there's a youth that they have someone that they care about or whatever? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, we're on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Oasis Youth Center, Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/Oasis Youth Center. Our website, oasisyouthcenter.org. We try to make it real easy for you. Give us a call, send us an email. There's a contact form at the bottom of the page. Don't judge us because our website's under construction right now. So it's looking a little rough, but you could still reach us on there.
Cool. Well, we'll have all that linked down in the bottom in the comments. And Morgan, how do they get in touch with you if they want to know more about Oasis, how they can help, how they get in touch with you, buy a house, all of the above?
You can find me on the Lakewood Abode website. Start there. Find me on Instagram, Morgan Reay Realtor, on Facebook as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Or listen to this podcast, which you're already doing.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far and to hear us talk about our random ass hot takes. Thank you for sticking around, and thank you for listening. And again, if you have anyone that needs the services of the Oasis Youth Center, please reach out and get in touch with somebody at the center or Matthew himself. With that, happy Pride Month, June and July for us Tacoma folks. Do you guys know why it moved to July?
Well,
why did it move to July?
It used to not have Pride on every city's Pride on the same day, and so last time I checked, Vancouver, BC's Pride is in August, so they're all kind of spaced out.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
We're
right.
Shout out to Yelm. They're having their first Pride this year. I've been following that for the last few months. Yelm's having their first. So show up to Yelm's this year.
You know what's crazy about all of this is there's people everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a rural town, if it's not, whatever. We have this idea that the dissenting view is the only there's people everywhere. There's allies everywhere. There's people everywhere that care. So, a city or whatever might get a bad rep because maybe, yes, they might be, the louder voices might be those other voices, but there are many people out there that do want a safe space for everyone to live.
That's right.
And have equal opportunities. It's really that simple. And repair the wrongs that have been done. It's really that simple. We make it so complex, So anyway, sorry. Back off my soapbox and rant. All right. Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming on. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Inside Abode is done. Tune in next week for another episode. Thank you for listening in. And with that, we're out of here. Peace.